Hi, my name is Jeannie Lauren Dowden for Conduit News, and today I'm joined with attorney Joey McCutcheon and Fayetteville citizen Ila Campbell. Just recently, they brought a case against the Fayetteville Public Schools regarding a FOIA request, and they are here to tell us about that today. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
So you recently filed a lawsuit against the Fayetteville Public Schools regarding a public records request that you've had against the Fayetteville schools. Do you mind telling us about that?
Yes. Actually, over the last several years, probably the last 3 years, there have been some decisions made, some policies changed, the way they were implemented, concerns that I had, that I began to ask questions. And really, I believe it was 2018, the first issue came up, and it was over Christmas. And I was hearing that all of a sudden, Christmas was now going to be delegated to the winter season. There would no longer be any Christmas trees, any Christmas lights, no decorations. And so I found that quite odd. And so I began asking questions. And after a year of conversation with the district, never really resolving that issue, and also recognizing that they were less than honest in some responses, I decided to file a FOIA. By that time, there were other concerns that we had. And so the first FOIA was filed. It was not complied with. And so a second FOIA was filed. Neither was it complied with. And it was at that time that a lawsuit was filed.
And then, so what happened whenever that lawsuit was filed, Joey?
Well, we took it all the way to the judge and let the judge make the decision. The other side never took responsibility for not answering the FOIA request. In fact, within days after we filed the lawsuit, they produced 8,000 documents. It's sad that a citizen has to file a lawsuit to get what belongs to us. That's public records.
Yeah, and that's a good point that you mentioned. I think that one thing that struck me is that, the judge mentioned, the documents were eventually released, but it wasn't until a lawsuit was filed and you said documents belong to the citizen. But, how often is a citizen going to go through with filing a lawsuit just to see those documents?
That's the sad thing, and that's why I congratulate Ila for showing the courage and the tenacity to push forward. A lot of people would just give up, and I'm sure people in the Fayetteville School District have asked for records before, been denied, said basically that would you limit your request? They don't get their answers and they just go away. Mm-hmm. We've got to have citizens in Arkansas that understand that FOIA gives us power, it gives us knowledge, and there are records. FOIAs are easy to file, and we've got to push forward. And if they don't want to do the right thing, then sometimes a lawsuit has to be filed.
One thing that you just mentioned was that you had been in conversation with the district for over a year before the FOIA was filed. And I think that provides rich context to the fact that, one thing that Judge Lindsey said whenever he gave his ruling was that, if only these two parties could have, if they had only sat down and had a conversation, in the lawsuit, wouldn't have had to been filed, which I understand that perspective. But that context wasn't provided to him. And so can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, actually, when the issue came up about Christmas, I'm a retired history teacher. And so it was a lot more than just a Christmas tree or Christmas lights, because I stand strongly and oppose cancel culture or revisionist history. And I saw what they were doing with removing Christmas, which is a national holiday. It is also a symbol of the religious heritage of our country. It's very important to our history. And we have a downtown that tens of thousands of people come every year to see our Christmas lights and to see the holidays. So for me, it was much more than just a Christmas tree. It was, where is this going and why? And so as I began to ask questions, it was very clear, because I started my conversation with the district with Dr. Colbert, the superintendent. And at that time, he explained to me that there had been a new mission statement developed, which really focused on inclusion and safety for all of our students, which I totally embrace.
Right.
But I couldn't find the connection between why are we going to exclude Christmas, how that connection came about, with being inclusive and safe. And so as I began to question more, the district was less than honest, really, about what had actually been decided upon. And after the FOIA, I came upon some emails that very clearly stated their intent, which was their per district directive, there would be no Christmas trees, no Christmas decorations. And so I felt like the district had not been honest. They hadn't been honest with me, nor were they being honest with the people. And so as other questions arose, and the FOIAs were filed and they were not complied with, I felt like I had exhausted the road of discussion. And so we then decided to file the lawsuit.
And I think another thing that was striking to me, because I sat in the courtroom and listened to testimony and the line of questioning, some of the things that were brought up, I was like, well, how do you know that that policy even exists? How do you know that that assessment or those tools or surveys even exist, like the IDI assessment tool? Well, we know that that exists because you mentioned that assessment tool during the November board meeting, and you mentioned that it was going to be given to the students and the staff. And so we know that that exists. And so those, two things, sometimes don't necessarily go together. And so that's why those things are asked for, right?
Correct.
So, during that hearing, like, what were you thinking whenever you were being questioned?
Well, quite frankly, it was a very new experience for me. Okay. Yes. My thought was, we are here because the district did not comply with the FOIA. And my concern is that any citizen recognize the right that they have to ask about the education of our children, to inquire into the integrity of our school district, and that we should not have to file a lawsuit to get that information. And so as I was listening to this, my thought was, we really did not have to be here had the district just complied with the questions that legitimately and legally they're required to answer of any citizen.
What were your thoughts?
Well, one thought is that I think we had a judge who was very fair, who listened to both sides, who came down with a ruling that was correct, finding that FOIA was violated. The fundamentals of FOIA was violated. They had 3 days to produce these records. And if they don't produce those records or ask for an extension, which we graciously give most of the time, if they're operating in good faith, because we understand sometimes there's more records, they need more than 3 days. I've got one in Fort Smith right now on this same issue that I gave them 2 weeks to produce the records. So I think we had a fair judge. I think when the judge recognized in his decision, and first bat out of the box, he talks about the intent of FOIA, that it's vital in a democratic society that public business be performed in an open and public manner. To me, that was so important. And I smiled when he said that, because that's so true. That's the way we hold government accountable. I mean, because government works for us, and it shouldn't be, as you've just mentioned, it shouldn't be, well, how do you know they exist? That's when trust breaks down, and when trust breaks down, lawsuits are filed. But I hope this sends a message to not only this school district, but school districts and government and cities across the state of Arkansas, that if you don't comply with the law, you're going to get sued. And there's serious consequences to this. The judge ordered that they pay attorney fees. That's fortunately, we have a new law in Arkansas that allows citizens like Ila to collect attorney fees from the losing side. And it's a shame that it has to go to that extent, because they're spending taxpayers' money. They hired 2 lawyers to defend this case. They filed a 39-page brief. I'd like to know what they spent on lawyers. Again, that's taxpayer money. So it's
well, and at one point during that year-long conversation, even before you filed the FOIAs, during the conversation that you were having back and forth regarding Christmas, they referred you to their legal team even before you filed FOIAs.
Correct.
And so, you know, I think we as parents and citizens want to have that open discussion and engagement, right? Because this is ultimately about our kids.
Yeah.
But you know, at the end of the day, what we want is transparency and honesty and truthfulness.
If I may say something, one of my thoughts that I had when the lawyer for the district made a rather dismissive and rather condescending address to the judge when she said, well, Judge, you know, Informed Parents of Fayetteville Public Schools is a political action group. Mm. And it is far from a political action group. It is a group of parents that are concerned. And so when it was addressed in that manner, it just seemed to be reflective of the district's attitude toward parents who are now very concerned about the 5-year equity plan. We're very concerned about CRT being in our schools. And yes, the FOIA has shown that CRT was the basis of professional development that was presented to our school. Yet, they denied that it was in our school. So I do hope this sends a message to the school district that we are concerned parents. And if they're concerned about political action group, they might look in the mirror.
Right. Right. Well said. Okay. Anything else that you want to add?
I think I've said enough.
Okay, Joey.
Well, you know, after the lawsuits filed, they produced 8,000 records. They want to say that there's no CRT, but they use all these terms. That's the thing that they're doing with CRT, because they know that the word critical race theory draws attention. So they're using terms like equity, diversity, inclusion, and we've got to get to the bottom of that. You know, let's call it what it is, and it's anti-American, right, and it's indoctrination of our children, and that's the scary part to me. They indoctrinate teachers first, and then the teachers are compelled to indoctrinate youngsters, and that should come from parents, not from a school teacher.
Right. Thank y'all so much.
Thank you.
I appreciate y'all.
Thank you.